Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is Sue Hagener, Administrative Services Director, and welcome to the first formal touch and a 30,000-foot flyby of our City Manager's proposed budget for 2025. We've got great plans for infrastructure improvements with our capital improvement program, technology advancements, and much more. We intend to continue to bring the city to new levels of service in the coming years using technology, ingenuity, data, citizen and employee engagement, and thoughtful deployment of our resources. Our plans are to do great things for government services. First, just a couple of housekeeping matters regarding the digital budget book, which was made available to everybody on September 13th. We've got a feature allowing us to link to specific documents or information. If you are reviewing the book online, you just need to look for the blue lettering and click on it. If you've got a printed copy, you'll need to look for the box with the arrow in it after the related wording. As you can see on this screen, just click on that and it will take you to a more detailed information page. Next, please remember that you'll see lots of carets throughout the book online. This simply means that there are additional pages under that subject. And don't forget, it's printable. There's a print button on the main ribbon of the book. You can print the entire book or just the sections you are interested in. And the digital budget book is ADA compliant. Now let me just remind everyone of our high-level 2025 budget calendar. So about March through July, we did a lot of back office preparations of our software, and the departments worked on their request. In late July, we had an abbreviated budget scrub to balance the general fund. In August, finance staff built out ClearGov website, which is the digital budget book. In September, we delivered the digital budget book, and as of today, we're providing Council an overview of the budget as well as a review of the proposed 2025 rates and fees. In October, this is optional, but we're happy to have one-on-one meetings with Council between Matt and the team if you need. In November, we're going to have our public hearings, and by December 31, we must have the budget approved to conduct any government spending by the next day. This budget reflects the city's dedication to sound financial stewardship and prudent fiscal management. It establishes the direction for the City Council, city departments, and all of their related programs and services. This budget allocates resources to the Council's priorities to the city's operational needs and addresses input from the recent community survey to ultimately improve the quality of life in Sequim. The overall budget is $55 million and the largest ever presented, and that's primarily due to the inclusion of the City Council approved $24 million capital improvement plan, which we'll cover a little bit later in the presentation. So what are our overreaching goals for the city budget? Well, that's easy because they are established by the budget development policy, as well as our fund balance policy. So that means we want to implement city goals and prioritize the city's primary needs. We want to achieve balance between ongoing expenses and ongoing revenues. That means one-time revenues are only used for one-time expenses. We also want to minimize the impact of taxes and fees on our residents and ratepayers, maintain and improve the quality of municipal services, and also maintain optimal reserve or fund balance levels. So what are the 2025 operational goals for city staff? Well, the first is to enhance customer-centric experience, which means for employees, for residents and businesses through re-engineering all touch points to increase efficient and exceptional exchanges. Digital transformation, which means continued focus and strategic commitment to digital transformation and innovation through state-of-the-art hardware, software, artificial intelligence, and analytical opportunities. We want to manage growth and development, which means implementing the comprehensive plan to support managed growth and development through strategic municipal code amendments and execution of capital projects. We also want to concentrate our commitment to our mission of providing high-quality municipal infrastructure and services to our residents through our comprehensive plan and deployment of our master plans. And finally, continued process improvement. We are committed to continued process improvement in all of our city operations to ensure efficiencies, data-driven decision, return on investment opportunities, all while lowering costs. And everything we've got planned for 2025 will move us forward towards accomplishing the City Council's priorities. And I want to remind Council that the budget document does not stand alone. There are many, many influences on the budget, like our capital improvement program, our master plans, our comprehensive plans, our council priorities. I just talked about our operational goals, our police department's strategic plan, and much more. And now for the meat and potatoes of the budget. This document is the actual 2025 budget presented at the fund level. And you can see that it's quite a big one as well, because we've got a total of $58 million in appropriations for the year. Again, primarily due to the inclusion of the council-approved $24 million capital improvement program. As a reminder, this is the level at which council approves the budget. So we say council approves the budget at the fund level. And that's simply what it means. What exactly is a fund? Well, a fund is a fiscal and accounting entity with a self-balancing set of accounts recording cash and other financial sources or revenues, together with all related expenses and residual ending fund balances. Each fund, as a separate accounting entity, is segregated for the purpose of carrying on a specific activity or attaining certain objectives in accordance with special regulations, restrictions or limitations, for example. For example, the general fund, that has all of our general government services in it. That's where all of our general government services are accounted for. And in this budget, the general fund has a total expenditures of about $13.4 million for 2025. Although it's composed of lots of details like salaries and benefits, supplies and services, the council approves the budget at the $13.4 million level. The $13.4 million in expenses is also commonly referred to in the budget world as appropriations. And hopefully by the end of November, the council has approved the overall budget or total appropriations at $58 million. So the previous slide is council's job. This slide demonstrates staff's job. It's not meant for you to literally read every line, but to express the detailed analysis that goes into every expenditure that we request. This particular example is our line item budget for some streets-related expenditures, and we do this for every department budget. It shows staff discipline on budgeting. We budget by the month if we can, but we identify each and every item that we'd like appropriations for in the next year. This is the budget discipline that exists behind every number that you approve. Now, this is a prescribed chart required in every budget book, and it shows at the highest level what pays for everything that we want to do next year. And just to be clear, the categories that you see, these are all classifications required by the State Auditor's Office, or SAO. So Goods and services on the right side of the screen is the largest revenue source at $16 million. Most of this category is comprised of water and sewer revenues, but it also includes impact fees as well as developer charges for projects and internal overhead allocations. The next largest resource to the city comes from what's called non-revenues/financing, and this is primarily loan proceeds, again related to our capital projects. The third largest resource to the city comes from taxes. This includes sales tax, real estate excise tax, utility taxes, property taxes, the Transportation Benefit District taxes, public safety taxes, just to name a few. The fourth largest source of revenues is transfers, mostly to pay for projects, but also to cover things like street operations, which doesn't have very big self-funding mechanism. The fifth largest resource to the city comes from intergovernmental revenues. Intergovernmental resources mostly include grants, but also include state shared revenues like motor vehicle taxes and liquor and marijuana enforcement monies. The sixth largest resource we have is fund balance of $3.8 million, and that simply means we've saved up money in the past to pay for future projects, and we're putting that into motion this year. Enterprise and fiduciary includes general facility charge revenue as for the water and sewer funds, so essentially water and sewer hookups. And then we've got licenses and permits, which is pretty self-explanatory, and miscellaneous revenues, which is interest income and rental income mostly. This too is a prescribed chart required in all budget books. Now you can immediately see why this is such a big budget. Consistent with prior years, capital projects and equipment are the highest, totaling $25 million or 43% of the budget. It was about 30% of the last year's budget. We'll, again, talk more specifically about that later. Typically, this category goes to salaries and benefits, which is the second highest use for our resources. We've also got non-expense, which includes items like security deposits that are returned to customers, or construction project retention that is held briefly until the projects are closed out. And of course, you know what transfers are. We've got charges for services, which is the fourth biggest use of our dollars, and that includes everything from city utility bills, repair and maintenance, professional services that we contract out for, as well as meals and travel and training. Other services, or interfund, is the fifth largest, and that includes all the overhead paid by the funds benefiting from the services provided for and paid for by the general fund. Intergovernmental is mostly taxes that the city pays. We've also got debt financing accounting for, and operating supplies is the smallest. This is a 5-year history of actuals and budgets for the entire city. We've got 3 columns of actuals, 2021, 2022, and 2023, and then the prior year budget and the requested budget for 2025. At the top of the page, you're going to see your revenues, and at the bottom of this page, you're going to see your expenses. On the note of expenses, again, this is a budget of $58 million and the largest ever presented to council. It's approximately $8 million more in expenses, or 16% higher than the prior year budget, and it's essentially 100% higher than the average of our actual performance from 2021 through 2023. But let's talk revenues. All revenues in 2025 are up from the prior year budget, the largest of which is other financing sources, and that consists of transfers and loan proceeds related to capital projects. We've got charges for goods and services. It's also increased due to water and sewer revenues, as well as developer contributions for capital projects. Again, intergovernmental represents grant proceeds related to capital projects. Now let's talk about expenses. You can see on the expense side that the largest increase is in capital projects, again due to the inclusion of our 2025 capital improvement program. Service charges also increased dramatically, and that can be anything from professional service contracts to the utilities that the city pays. Okay, now let's switch gears to focus on the general fund. The general fund, as I've said before, is where all of our general governmental services are accounted for. And the general fund is just one of many. The general fund basically equals general governmental services. And this fund is typically the largest of the funds in each budget, but not in 2025, because again, we have an extremely dense, if you will, capital improvement program in there. But the general fund still does account for about 25% of the entire $58 million budget. The good news is the general fund is in the black, meaning current revenues of $13.5 million slightly exceed expenses. Revenues went up about $700,000 or 6%, as well as expenses went up about $700,000 or 6%. And our reserves of $3.4 million are slightly below policy maximum. So the general fund is in great shape budget-wise. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about our general fund revenues for 2025. We've got total revenues increasing by $755,000 or 6% from the 2024 budget. Sales tax of $4.4 million is up $54,000 or 1%. Utility tax revenue, which tends to be very stable, is up 5%. We have utility taxes on cable, electric, telephone, water, sewer, and garbage utilities. We've got a proposed 1% property tax increase allowed by law. License and fees related to permitting and business activity is up quite a bit because we expect development activity to start really humming here. Intergovernmental of $518,000 is up $105,000, again because of grants for the comp plan. Charges for goods and services is up $296,000 or 9%, and miscellaneous revenues is up about $46,000, primarily due to rentals. A bit more about sales tax because it makes up the largest portion of our revenue sources in the general fund. If you didn't know, we have an 8.9% sales tax rate within the Sequim city limits. And of that, the city of Sequim gets 0.85% of that. And most of the sales tax that's collected within the city of Sequim goes to other places. Like you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, 6.5% goes to the state of Washington. Lots of stuff goes to the county. And we also collect a little bit for public safety tax, which is restricted money, as well as the Sequim Transportation Benefit District tax. Again, that's restricted. So on the previous slide, we saw the distribution via the percentages. On this slide, we have the distributions with dollars. So we estimated that the annual Sequim sales in the city limits are going to be $514 million. And of that, the city is going to collect $4.4 million in sales tax revenues. And then down at the bottom, you can see the sales tax distribution. So on a sale in Sequim of $1,000, the total sales tax is $89. The state share is $65. All other shares is $13. And the Sequim's share is just $11. Fun fact. And some more specifics on our 2025 general fund expenses. They increased by about $740,000 or 6% over the 2024 budget. Most of that was in salaries and benefits. which represents 2 union contracts, meaning the police and the sergeant's contracts, as well as step increases for our non-uniformed and COLA increases for our non-represented. We did have some decreases in some medical insurance policies for our non-represented due to the fact that we became a well city within recent years, and small reduction in our PERS retirement rates. Staffing still represents about 71% of the general fund spending. We had an increase in supplies of $21,000, primarily due to engineering and police small tools and equipment. We had an increase in service charges of $251,000. Honestly, that's primarily related to the consulting work that will be helping us get the comp plan updated, as well as the related SQM municipal code. We had an increase in intergovernmental services by about $24,000. That's all contract driven and represents the Clallam County Criminal Justice Services contract, as well as PENCOM. And we had a decrease in transfers out of the general fund by $81,000, primarily due to the fact that our general obligation debt payments on the Civic Center have been reduced. And this is a graph of the general fund expenses by department. So you can see all the different governmental services accounted for in the general fund, as well as the difference between the 25 budget and the 24 budget. You can see quite a few of the departments actually went down in expenditures. For example, the finance department went down by $101,000, and that's due to increased allocation out of staff time. We had most of our bigger increases were in the police department due to contract negotiations, as well as new training requirements for our police officers. And we had a large increase in parks operations due to the addition of some seasonals there, as well as just increased maintenance of our park properties. We have a new department called events, so that we can better track the cost of events and the revenues that they bring in. And growth planning was also a big increase due to the comp plan update, as well as the related SQM municipal code updates that I talked about in the previous slide. So during the annual budget process, the city reviews requests for funding from the community. Any requests made of the city need to come in the form of a grant application. And in 2025, the city continues to support human services to the tune of $215,000, as well as general programs that offer a broad public benefit, like the Economic Development Council. And those requests total about $135,000. Now you can see in the middle of the graph, we have a new request this year from Olympic Peninsula YMCA of $85,000. And we'll be asking for council's direction on funding that. I believe this request is in the form of payment for partial FTE slash navigator for the YMCA. Total contributions, it should be noted, to human services have increased over 37% since 2022, and this program accounts for 1.6% of the general fund budget, which is either consistent with or actually a lot better than allocations of comparable cities. And this particular chart you'll also find is linked to the transmittal letter or the budget message from the city manager. So the general fund doesn't just pay for general governmental services, it funds other stuff. So total transfers out of the general fund are $1.2 million. And as I mentioned before, they decreased by $81,000. The general fund makes a transfer into our long-term general obligation debt reserve in the amount of $200,000, which is down $50,000 due to lower debt service payments. We've reduced our equipment reserve transfers down to $285,000, and we've reduced our transfers to street operations down to $685,000, and our arts and culture transfer is static at $55,000. So the general fund pays for a lot more than just general governmental services. All right, let's move on to another operational fund we've got, which is street operations. We saw revenues decrease a little bit by about $50,000 due to a reduction in transfers in from the general fund and right-of-way permits, and that's consistent with current activity. Total expenses also decreased by a total of $37,000, and that was a combination of a decrease in salaries and benefits due to retired or reallocated staff. We had an increase in supplies due to getting new holiday decorations and a traffic safety sign program. We increased our service charges for insurance premiums and right-of-way utilities, and we decreased transfers out to our equipment reserve. Now, as for our water operations and our sewer operations funds, two of our biggest operational funds we have at the city. As for revenues, both water and sewer revenues increased by the 3% approved by council, as well as to accommodate growth in the number of households and utility accounts. As for expenditures, for water, overall expenses increased by about $184,000. This is a result of increased wages and benefits due to one additional FTE. This FTE is needed to accommodate workloads due to rapid infrastructure expansion. We also increased expenses for fire and casualty insurance and transferred out to capital projects. As for sewer, that budget increased by $423,000. Professional services increased by $168,000 due to interfund service fees associated with the reuse demonstration facility. Additionally, again, fire and casualty insurance increased, and our taxes increased due to higher revenues. We've also budgeted for WRF lab UV bulbs and interfund transfers out to sewer projects. So we've talked a lot today about the size of our capital improvement program for 2025, and this at a high level is what you'll see in the budget book. For a total of $24.6 million in capital projects. In comparison, the prior year was $12.6 million. You can see we've got $1.7 million for parks projects, $1.6 for capital facilities. The biggest one is going to be in multi-divisional projects down there towards the bottom of $12.4 million. And we've got details of each individual project coming right up. And in your budget book, you're going to find this particular graph. And you can see at the very top, we've got multi-divisional. That's the whopper of $12.4 million, namely due to the West Swim Bay corridor improvements. For each one of these capital projects, there's going to be a description of the project and the benefit of the project identified in the key goals of that particular section of the book. So for that parks project, the Carrie Blake Park bridge replacement, for each one of those projects, you're going to see a detailed description there. So what about staffing? So here's a historical look at our staffing levels and total salaries and benefits over time. And the amounts that you see towards the bottom of your screen are the amounts before any reduction in these line items for charges out to other departments. On the top row, you're going to see the budgeted FTE. In 2021, it was 86.51. In 2025, it's 97.52. The next line is our population, and you can see our employees per 1,000 people in the city of Sequim has remained relatively static over the years. Total salaries and benefits of $12.5 million is an increase of about 5.5% over the prior year. Okay, so let's take a deeper look into the changes in FTE from the 2024 budget. So in 2025, we have a total of 97.51 FTE, and that represents an increase of 0.81 FTE. On your screen, you can see an accounting of all the changes. The first 5 are reductions. You'll see those in red. They were all temporary FTE brought on in 2024 to either assist with the Tyler technology conversion or to allow for shadowing and overlap of retiring staff. The added part-time Public Works Administrator is being brought on to support all the new grant and loan management responsibilities related to our capital projects. We're also requesting an additional water operator to help with the workload related to growth. And finally, we are requesting 2 seasonals for our parks as they are expanding in number as well as demand. So that's it for the 30,000-foot flyby of the city manager's proposed 2025 budget. Key decisions that the city council will have to make are: number 1, provide direction to staff on the $85,000 request from YMCA that is not currently in the budget. This $85,000 request would actually put the general fund in the red, so that's the first decision. There's going to be a decision on increasing the property tax levy by the allowed 1%. There's going to be a decision about our rates and fees schedule, Chapter 3.68 of the Sequim Municipal Code. There's proposed capital projects in the budget in accordance with the CIP. And the final is approving the budget. So your next steps are to read the budget book, whether it's digitally or I'm happy to print you off a copy. I'm also happy to take any questions, comments, or concerns. There's my little email address there. And please, please request any additional time you might need with staff to review the book or address any questions that you have. Thanks for listening, and happy budgeting.